how did we get here? NBC's Josh Mankiewicz takes a look back.
If you didn't see this coming, it's because you weren't paying attention.
This is a fraud on the American public.
Starting election night, before all the votes were even counted, the president began to light the way for those who followed.
We want all voting to stop. We don't want them to find any ballots at 4 o'clock in the morning and add them to the list, okay? It's a very sad moment.
A lot of people heard him. That same evening, Trump supporters began to gather in Maricopa County, Arizona, demanding to be let in to a vote counting center. The volume only got louder. The day after the election, with the outcome still in doubt, Mr. Trump tried to claim victory, literally. On Twitter, he wrote, "We have claimed for electoral purposes the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania." Voters, however, had laid their claims elsewhere. Joe Biden won, and President Trump reached for that volume knob again and again.
If you count the legal votes, I easily win. If you count the illegal votes, they can try to steal the election from us. If you count
What followed was a bewildering comedy of errors, a shotgun marriage of performance art and politics, culminating in Rudy Giuliani's press conference at Four Seasons Total Landscaping in Pennsylvania.
Gee, just about the 700,000 votes that President Trump was ahead by 2 days ago had disappeared.
It felt like the last gasp of a failed campaign, except it wasn't over. And very soon it wasn't funny either.
This election was stolen by mail-in ballots. Those are the ballots that were stuck in the machine 8 times, 9 times, 10 times.
I'd like to see
Senator Mitt Romney offered Biden early congratulations on his win. Other Republican leaders pretended it simply hadn't happened. As January 6th approached, President Trump seemed no closer to admitting the electoral reality in front of him.
There's no way I lost Georgia. There's no way. We won by hundreds of thousands of votes.
Over the weekend, Trump called Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, to claim victory where none existed, and to ask for help in conjuring votes out of thin air and even thinner evidence.
I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state.
On Monday, Mr. Trump told his supporters again there was simply no way he had lost.
We've demonstrated that we won the election in a landslide.
Senator Romney got a taste of the anger that generated, as seen in this cell phone video shot at an airport before tonight's joint session of Congress.
Why aren't you supporting President Trump?
The temperature was rising, and once again, Trump seemed to be thinking less about how democracy works and more about his favorite subjects, himself and his enemies. Here he is this morning at a rally in Washington.
We will never give up. We will never concede. We will stop the steal.
And then his call to action.
And we're going to have to fight much harder. And after this, we're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you. We're going to walk down. We're going to walk down anyone you want, but I think right here we're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
Well, he didn't go, just his supporters who broke into the Capitol. After hours of frightening chaos, the president released a video urging them to go home in peace. And then, in the same breath, repeated his lie that the 2020 election was stolen. "We are a government of laws and not of men," said John Adams more than 200 years ago. Today, that idea was tested. Tonight, it may be proven true.
Josh Mankiewicz kind of walking us through how we got to where we are today. We want to bring in now White House correspondent Peter Alexander. He's had a front row to all of this these past several years. I'd love to know what you have to think about that, Peter, what we just walked through that was just laid out.
Well, Josh laid it out very well, Lester. I'm struck by the fact that we as Americans right now have this chief executive who is more connected to the fantasy of how he lost than he is to the reality of the fact that he was, in fact, voted out of office. Some of the most striking comments, of course, of these last several weeks are those that we showed you from today, where the president, inciting those supporters, said to them, we're going to go to the Capitol. I'm going to be there with you. We have to fight harder. He called this an egregious assault on democracy. Of course, they went that direction in mass, mobs ultimately storming the Capitol, taking it under siege. The president wasn't there for any of it, but it's his language, really, and I've witnessed this from traveling to his campaign events over the course of the last several months and covering him for the last several years. It's his language that these Trump supporters, ultimately today these rioters, have marinated in over the course of these last several years, and without any other information and without a shared set of facts anymore, when there are some individuals who have a different set of facts, which, as was once coined by one of the president's aides, alternative facts than the real facts that we witnessed, it's fundamentally a real challenge for democracy. And this is the implosion, this rebellion, this revolt was a function of that today. It was an alarming day. It was an awful day. I was there at the White House as I left with security, as is our precaution to leave the White House earlier. I passed through just a huge parade of Trump supporters yelling obscenities, stop the steal, and frankly, you didn't stop to enter a conversation with them, but as you heard the conversations among some of these folks, some of the things they were saying were literally echoing the words of the president, and you just wanted to fact check every one of them. But in spite of that, and frankly, in spite of the president's effort to sort of create some calm late tonight, it was still mixed with the complaints, and neither of them, I suspect, were heard.
Yeah, Peter, I recall maybe the day of or a day or two before the election seeing an interview with the president in which he seemed very reflective, and he was talking about how painful the idea of losing is. I mean, no one likes to lose, but winning is certainly part of the image that he likes to project. I mean, you've seen this in action.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, the thing you've heard from the beginning of his campaign was this idea of winning. We're going to get so sick of winning, the president used to say. And he also would emphasize this other idea, which was the idea of strength. He said it in his comments today, that weakness is sort of the ultimate fault one can have. You have to demonstrate strength. Even in these moments where the president was on the defensive, he would do something sort of more outlandish, more grandiose, in fact, to try to demonstrate this position of strength, even if it was ultimately him who was the one who needed to be defending it. It reminds me of a moment that I had with the president early on in this pandemic in March, when I asked the president what was the message he would share with Americans who were scared. This is when only about 200 Americans, I think only a handful of Americans had died, maybe 200 cases existed in the country, but already that fear was seeping in. We heard it. I heard it from loved ones, from neighbors, from others. And I asked the president to speak to the camera, and what would he say to Americans who were scared? And in that moment, rather than show empathy or perhaps weakness, as an aide described it to me, the president tried to show strength. And in his eyes, that strength was attacking the reporter in the room, at that moment calling me a terrible reporter, which did nothing to satisfy the nerves of Americans who were worried not about a conversation between me and him, but about their own family's safety and their own safety. So, what I'm struck by is what the off-ramp is for this president at this point. He promised today he would never concede. At this point, does he have any other option to concede? Republicans are obviously furious, not just Democrats. A lot of Republicans are upset about this, with conversations reportedly floating about the idea of a 25th Amendment or censure or even impeachment again. What does the president do with 2 more weeks before Joe Biden is sworn in here? Does he ever concede? What does this do to his political future? There's a lot of soul searching for the party, and this was probably not a good day for this president, certainly in his effort to retain any political career widely beyond his base going forward.
Peter, good to have you join us for our coverage.